Back here talking Big Ten football at the Voice of College Football with all of you. Comments, questions are welcome. We have left the link on X. We will do the same in the live chat. Corey Brad right next to me from the Hawkeye at the Storm. Check out the show we just produced over on the Iowa channel with Corey. Matt Zemek from Trojans Wire breaking down USC and Iowa. Corey, how you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing all right. Yeah. I vented enough about Iowa football during the last hour, and we certainly got clarification on the playoff this past week. Iowa played itself out, unfortunately, as well as they played, I thought, during a large stretch of that game. Washington, what a disgraceful loss. They, to me, proved to be a pretender. I don't think Iowa's a pretender, but they're just not going to qualify. But yeah, to lose at Wisconsin's pretty amazing. And and then Northwestern battled USC, the Friday night game. We talked about that with Matt Zemek this past hour. I thought, as much as we want to praise Maava for running down that big defensive lineman who intercepted the pass and was returning it, you ought to be ashamed of yourself for fumbling that ball at the one. I mean, and it's like getting hit by a punter or a kicker on a return and getting taken down. It's kind of embarrassing to be taken down by a quarterback, but fumbling it out of bounds, that changed the game. I mean, the game totally changed from that point forward. Momentum. Northwestern was going to be up and have all the momentum, and it totally changed. And then we saw Rutgers score some points, and they're still in the race for bowl eligibility. It's amazing that UCLA, they lost this past weekend, but man, here we are a few weeks removed from the season, and they're on the verge of being close to having a 500 record in the league without having their head coach for most of the season. So lots of interesting stuff happened across the conference.
Yeah, back to that Northwestern play. I just think it's about being aware of who you are and what type player you are. You are a defensive lineman who is on the field to do defensive lineman stuff. Then that phenomenal play to get the interception, absolutely, and to bring it back. But you're not Lamar Jackson diving for the pylon. Play your role. If you get tackled at the 2, your team's in great shape. You just made a great play. Live for the next down. Let the offense take care of it. Just taking that chance, that risk when you are not used to handling the football.
That big boy was rumbling, Mark. He was rumbling. And I'll tell you what. Say it again.
Story is his last name. I do not remember his first name.
A big story was rumbling, but they should call him Six Story. Anyways, it's interesting because Aaron Graves had a very similar play against Wisconsin earlier this year. Remember the interception he had, rumbled it down to the 1 and I think he busted through a tackle or two, and they initially called it a touchdown, and they called it back. But and we saw Davion Nixon against Penn State. Remember that? The swim move for big old Davion Nixon. How about Broderick Benz, 2010 Arizona in Tucson? Do you remember that interception, pick 6 from big Broderick Benz?
I do not. Najee Story, because I like to know people's names. Najee Story, a senior for Northwestern. All right. We look ahead to this week's games. And tonight, of course, the unveiling of the college football playoff rankings. So I'll be back here live at approximately 8 p.m. Eastern time to run through the latest edition. So if we take it from the top, Ohio State was number 1 last week. They're going to stay there. Indiana was 2. Maybe they dropped to 3 with a lackluster performance against Texas A&M. Maybe Texas A&M with a dominant win against Missouri takes their position. The next deal is that Oregon was number 9. They were the lowest ranked 1-loss team from the Big Ten or the SEC. Now, does the committee view that as an impressive win? You can view that 2 different ways. Is that an impressive win for Oregon, just that they beat a good opponent? Or is that a non-impressive win because they barely escaped by the skin of their teeth and Iowa's not even given the level of respect that I and others give them? I saw the AP poll and could not help myself but show my ire for the AP pollsters who have Iowa at 29. They have Tennessee at 21. They're
Why?
both 6-3. It makes no sense.
Well,
It
didn't okay.
yeah,
Tennessee,
it
yeah, that's a weird one.
Tennessee has beaten no one and just literally no one. And not that it matters, but the story for the Big Ten is USC and Michigan. USC and Michigan. That's what it's down to now that I was out, and in recent weeks, Nebraska and Minnesota and Illinois and Washington have been knocked out with a third loss. It's pretty much down to USC and Michigan trying to get the Big Ten a fourth team in the playoff.
Yeah, we didn't talk about Omar Cooper's catch. I mean, I was watching that live, and just an unbelievable effort by him and by Fernando Mendoza. But yeah, you're right. I don't think I'm with Matt Zemek. I don't think Michigan's very good. I think they're as good as Iowa is. I mean, so I say not very good. Like, I think they're good. I don't think they're great. But I think, yeah, this will be an interesting couple of weeks. USC's game against Iowa, USC's game against Oregon. We could easily see USC and Michigan both be knocked out of the race, and it's going to be pretty easy decision for the playoff committee. After that game against Ohio State, assuming Michigan loses that game, Michigan will be a 3-loss team, and yeah, it's going to be. You could easily look at this thing and say, hey, if Iowa beats, I mean, Oregon right now has 1 loss, but they don't have any good wins. 10-2 probably gets them in. We've talked about that. Brand is important, but they still go to Washington and play USC. The easiest scenario, I talked about this last week, is for the Big Ten just to lose enough games so that the committee can just take 2 teams and call it a day and take as many SEC teams as they want. But with the poll, we all know the AP poll is fraudulent. It will be interesting to see. I mean, I'm biased towards Iowa. Will Iowa remain in the rankings? I think they probably should. Where are they in your rankings?
I believe they were 20th in the college football playoff rankings last week. Is that correct?
Yes.
I think they were
Yes, they were
20th. I had them 18, I believe, last week, and I currently have them after losing, I believe. Now, a lot of people will say, well, you dropped them to 21st. I think that's where I have them. It's not that I dropped them to 20. Like, I didn't say, well, Iowa's number 18. They lost to Oregon. They should drop to 21. No, I just rank all the teams and I compare all the resumes. So it's a matter of other teams playing extremely well, winning big games and eclipsing Iowa. I did not penalize Iowa. If anything, I think it justifies their value in playing one of the top 5 to 10 teams in the country, basically even. There had to be a winner, of course. There has to be a winner of the game, but basically you might as well say, we have no idea coming off this field who's the better team. Now, we think it's Oregon. They did win on the road, and they have been better and won more games outside of that game. But if we didn't know anything about these teams and just watched a game and you took Oregon and Iowa off these names of these 2 teams and they just played a game, we would have no idea who was better.
Correct. And by the way, Clay S., he says, Corey always says Iowa has a shot in every game, but Ohio State is a guaranteed win against Michigan. When did I say that's a guaranteed win? I didn't say that. No, I said they'll be favored, and assuming they win, it doesn't mean they will. We talked last week about the potential of Michigan beating Ohio State and it being a problem if somehow Iowa would have ran the table. Oregon ended up as a 2-loss team. If you have 3 or more 2-loss Big Ten teams, that would have been an issue, but that's kind of taken care of itself, I think.
I have little doubt that Ohio State is a better team than Michigan, but that doesn't mean that they're going to win the game on that day in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
They were a better team last
year. Weather conditions.
Yeah, they were a better team or Ohio State was a better team last year.
Yeah, by far. They're actually closer this year than they were last year. They're not going to be a 23-point favorite this year. And folks, if you want to check out my analysis there, Steve Dace was already hit me up with some Ohio State and Michigan breakdown, and that's on Michigan Podcast. I'm sure it's being released tonight. Corey, we got you for 5, 6, 7 minutes, something in that range. You want to take this call? We got Notre Dame fan Rob showing up. Rob, what's going on?
Hey guys, how you doing?
Good.
Yeah, I find it interesting with the Big Ten right now. I think Iowa had a chance to get where they needed to go. They kind of controlled their own destiny, and they played a really good game against Oregon. And when you lose by 2 to a team like that, that's not a bad loss. And it is going to be disappointing because I think the committee probably will unrank Iowa after that. I hope the playoff committee doesn't, but we'll see. They probably will though.
The problem is the law, as you know, Rob. The problem is if you're an Iowa fan, that loss, like, they can be ranked, but the rankings don't matter, past a certain point. So, but I agree with you. That shouldn't, per Mark's rankings, the rankings should weigh performances within each game and not be so hyper fixated on record. So
right. Well, but so Iowa, I mean, because who do they play next?
They got
USC this week.
They have USC. Yeah, I knew they had like 2 tough opponents in a row. Yeah. So, like, if Iowa had taken care of business with Oregon and then beat USC, I mean, they were definitely in. I mean, they had their destiny in their hands because, they could have found a way into the Big Ten championship game, or at least finish with a very strong, stretch down the road. So
they weren't going to the Big Ten championship game.
No, that's right. Yeah, it was going to be Indiana and Ohio State, unless because we would need Indiana to slip up against whoever they're playing. I don't think they have any.
Somebody in Purdue. They only have 2 games left.
Yeah, so they've got
a bye week this week, and they've got somebody that they can manhandle. And they've got Wisconsin. They've got talk about a light touch to finish the season. They've got Wisconsin and Purdue. Those are their last 2 games.
Wisconsin just beat a top 25 team this past week.
Wisconsin just handled Washington, so who knows?
Yeah, they did.
Got to watch out.
Wisconsin handled Washington. This will give some kind of idea. I don't know if you guys came across this statistic. The Wisconsin punter threw for more yardage than Wisconsin quarterbacks did Saturday. He threw 1 pass and completed it for 24 yards.
Is that fancy new air raid, Mark?
That's it.
That sounds like Iowa football 2021, 2022, 2023, man. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's insane.
It's a great stat.
What I always loved was listening, talking about Iowa punter having more total yardage than the entire offense as a whole.
Wow.
And winning games. They won games that way.
It's amazing that Iowa has basically won all the games that they've won in this last decade or whatever with just basically defense. I mean, their defense has been so good.
Yeah,
it's mind blowing.
5 years.
Now, I was gonna say last decade's a little bit.
Yeah, maybe a little much, but you know what I mean. I mean,
they've been predicated on that throughout Kirk's tenure, but it's been since it was 21, 22, 23, and then 24. They were just extremely one-dimensional with Caleb Johnson. At least they ran the ball well, but. People have been hard on me, Mark, for talking about Iowa in the playoff hunt, but Rob's not an Iowa guy, and he just said exactly what I've been saying. Had they just won out, their resume would have been hard to turn down. Somebody called into our postgame show Saturday and said, this is somebody with Homer glasses, and I shut him down right away. But they said, if all chaos breaks loose in the SEC, a 9-3 Iowa team could still get in. I'm like, how much chaos would have to break loose for the committee to consider a 9-3 Iowa team?
The problem with the chaos in the SEC is that the lineup of contenders is so long that the chaos involves all of them. So they're winning games. Like, the very worst teams in the SEC would have to win every game. Like Mississippi State and Kentucky would have to be winning all these. And I don't even think there's enough of those games to knock all those teams out.
Yeah, that's what stinks at this point in the season with the way that some of those teams are lined up. It's going to be almost impossible for them to not get at least 4 to 5. I think 5 is probably a safe bet for the SEC. 4 is pretty much a lock at this point. So,
and Corey, don't forget that one of these last 3 weeks for the SEC is a partial give me week, is their scrimmage week. So,
well, there's already been a couple of those games, but you're right. And that honestly, Mark, when you're going to play the Citadel and Bellarmine, that should actually hurt your resume. I don't care if you win by 60. To me, that should hurt your resume. I mean, to me, it's the no. You're about to try to go back at me. To me, it's the same thing. And I'll say this to Rob. Rob, I don't have anything against Notre Dame specifically. I do have something against the committee and college football as a whole not forcing Notre Dame's hand at joining a conference. I think you can agree with this. I have no like if Notre Dame can get away with it, great. But if college football as a whole, they didn't want this lack of parity, or I shouldn't say lack of parity, but there should be a balanced playing field that we're evaluating teams on. And when you have a team like Notre Dame that's perennially in the conversation that doesn't have a conference championship game to evaluate, the committee, college football, could have the opportunity to force their hand and either basically say, hey, if you don't play in a conference championship game, we're going to count it as a loss. We're going to consider that a loss. They could do that.
Yeah, I've always said, like, if Notre Dame was like forced to join a conference, I would definitely wish it would be the Big Ten, like, because then you could get the USC rivalry, lock that up. You'd have the Michigan rivalry, like they'd be able to get those rivalries so much easier now.
Oh, and I know college football's become national, but obviously it makes sense regionally. I'm just saying, you get what I'm saying, right? Like they're choosing not to go to a play in a conference. So all these other teams, if Iowa goes and gets slaughtered in a Big Ten championship game, somehow that counts against them. But we're not counting the fact that Notre Dame is choosing not to play in a game in which they could get slaughtered by their choice. So it's like that's, I guess, my point with like Alabama playing the Citadel.
It is a double-edged sword. I agree with what you're saying, but I also will bite back with just a little bit of like, without a conference championship, that is also something that can hurt Notre Dame in a way, if that makes sense.
Does it hurt them?
Well, it can. It might not hurt them this year, but it could definitely hurt them in the future. Like, because here's the thing, right? At week 2, lots of people were like, "Oh, Notre Dame's out. They're done. They can't get in now." And a big reason for that is because, like, let's say if Notre Dame had like not looked good down the stretch, wasn't rising up the rankings or anything, let's say they're outside the top 15 right now, they wouldn't have a conference championship to backdoor their way in like Clemson did last year. You see what I'm saying?
Depending on what conference they join, if they join the SEC or the Big Ten, if they're in the conference championship game, they're in the playoff regardless.
Yeah.
And I agree with Corey's point, but I don't think the point, because I've made it many times, the same point, but I don't think it's quite as valid as it used to be during the 4-team playoff, because we now have teams all through the 12-team playoff that do not play in conference championship games, whereas to play in a 4-team playoff, you almost always had to play in a conference championship game to get to the 4-team playoff.
For seeding, you're still not evaluating them on a level playing field. For seeding purposes, at a minimum.
Well, yeah, you are, because you still have other teams that did not make a conference championship game that are making the playoff.
I understand that, but when you're having to try to weigh, say, an 11-2 Michigan team that is a conference championship loser versus a Notre Dame team that's 11-1 that didn't play in a conference championship game because of their own choice, they're not in conference. Those are decisions that, to me, if you're the committee and you want to force Notre Dame's hand, you say, we're going to give the favor to Michigan, regardless of how they play in the Big Ten championship game, because they're in a conference.
I totally agree with you that that's Notre Dame's choice. Therefore, it's totally off the table, as opposed to other teams that had the opportunity and just didn't make it. But those conference championship game losers still have to be evaluated against other teams besides Notre Dame that played one fewer game.
Hey, can I change the subject real quick, guys, before I go? Sorry. What do you guys think about this Big Ten deal that's coming up, this media deal or whatever? I know a lot of like Michigan's obviously not wanting to be a part of it. USC's getting told that they need to strap up and get on board. Like, I mean, what are you guys' thoughts on this? Do you think like having the badges on the uniforms and all, like it's an interesting thing that's going on?
So this is something where I will plead some ignorance, where in the past I would have been all over this, but considering where and how I spend my time now versus when I was doing this all the time full throttle, I got to admit I will have to look into it, at which I can't really guarantee that I will. To have a a real opinion on it. I generally know what you're talking about, but I would have to really look into it to have an opinion about it. All these conferences, it reminds me of the Big 12 saying we're going to sell our rights as a conference, our naming rights, to a corporation, so we can make more money, basically, and we don't care what our name of our conference is because it's more important to make money. So it's kind of the same thing to a certain extent, but I would have to look into that.
Yeah, like earlier. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think we all. I mean, I'm surprised that we haven't gotten to the point sooner where, I mean, you look at it in the NBA. I know it's pro sports, but what's the difference between, the Timberwolves having a Wish logo on their jerseys?
Yeah, I hate that, man.
But I mean, if everything's commercialized, I remember some LPG back when I was working radio. I remember we had a running joke with this LPGA golfer whose last name was Pancake, and she had an endorsement from Waffle House, so she had a big Waffle House, uniform and bag. So like, I think there's some ways to make it less tacky, but I'm surprised that we haven't seen more. I mean, it's like you said, it's happening. So I don't know the ins and outs of that proposed new deal, but yeah, you just expect things to get more commercialized.
Yeah, sign of the times, I guess. All right, well, awesome talking to you guys. I'll let you go and get some other callers on here.
Thanks, Rob.
All right, see you.
All right, Corey. No, you need to get going. From the Hawkeye of the Storm, when is the next time you're going live?
So we'll have a live show Thursday night, Iowa Drake women's basketball, and then Friday big men's game, Iowa Xavier inside Carver. So
the Musketeers.
The Musketeers, yeah. Patino is the new coach there, so
really
it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see what Xavier looks like. Yeah, I was going to look real quick for the tip time for. I think Drake.
As you're looking that up, I will let you know that my prep for this year's college basketball season involves watching one short. I don't know who produced it, but he was talking about college basketball coaches no longer wearing suits. That's what it was about.
Yeah. Well, Fran McCaffrey was a big part of that. Although Ben McCollum, he's a shirt and tie guy, so he doesn't wear a suit jacket, but he's always got the shirt and tie on.
Yeah, they should have suits on.
A jacket?
Yeah.
Why do they have to wear a jacket?
They don't have to do anything, but unless the NCAA or someone would make them. But that's the way it always was from the time I was a little tyke and way before that, of course. So they should be wearing a suit and tie.
I did prefer that with Fran because after he stopped wearing suit and tie, there was less things for him to throw. I remember at the Big Ten tournament, like 2012, him taking his jacket and slamming it into the chair. And then he was banging on the scores table like an ape. That was a good memory. So anyways, we'll have live post-game coverage Thursday night for women's basketball, Friday night for men's basketball, and then after the USC football game on Saturday.
What I find amusing is that started during COVID, correct? 2020.
Yeah.
For some reason. What does that have to do with a pandemic? Not wearing a shirt and tie and wearing a sweatsuit. What?
The only thing I can think of, I don't know. I know if it had anything to do with like the Dickie V Foundation, the Shoes for Cancer, that thing, because they were already wearing white sneakers. There were no fans in the stadium. Maybe that was part of why they decided they didn't need to wear suits. I don't know.
All right, Corey. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Mark. Thanks. Have a great day.
You too. The great Corey Bratta from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Okay, we'll be back. We're going to take your call. We got the real MVP and anyone else. We will take calls. We do have a Florida State show coming up at 7 Eastern. I got to run to that. We also have the ranking show. So I'll be back for the ranking show at approximately 8 p.m. Eastern. The real MVP, what's going on tonight?
You know the rankings come on at 7 tonight, right?
But they're going to be over at 8, correct?
Yeah, they'll be.
That's what I found.
Yeah, they'll be over at 8.
Okay.
But They'll be out officially around 7:20 if they go the same pace as last time. I guess
Okay.
my question would be, because none of these teams we're talking about on the bubble really play one another. So we haven't really discussed the scenario if they all just went out. Like, who would be left out in that scenario?
Yep.
Would it be a 10-2 Vandy, a 10-2 Notre Dame? I imagine Oregon and 11-1's probably, well, they should get in. 10-2 Michigan. You know, all these teams can win out. And the only real game of, like, they're going to be underdogs is Oklahoma at Alabama this week, Texas beating Georgia or Texas A&M, and then would be Michigan beating Ohio State. But outside of those few games, none of these results is going to be like, wow, that's improbable
Yep.
at this point in the season.
So how many teams in the SEC can finish 10-2?
7.
Texas, Oklahoma, Georgia, Bama's 4.
Ole Miss, Texas A&M.
Texas A&M, Vandy. Gotcha. 7. 7 SEC teams at 10-2. Michigan, Oregon loses 10-2. Well, USC can't. So no. USC beats Iowa and Oregon. USC sweeps. They knock Oregon down to 10-2. And Michigan's 10-2. So we got 10-2 teams just out of those two conferences.
Right. Then you got to throw Notre Dame in there.
Crazy. 11 people. You're listening to that. 11 10-2 teams just out of those two conferences. With how many spots on the line?
7.
So if you've got
8.
Ohio State and Indiana in, one of the SEC teams will be in as the champion, and the Big 12 and the ACC, that makes 5. The G5 makes 6. So 6 spots
For 9 teams.
For 9 teams at 10-2. Crazy.
Yeah, and this is nobody's really talked about the scenario, but you know, it's at the point of the season where it's not really just conjecture anymore. It's a pretty reasonable reality that can occur.
Yeah, and I would love to sit down and try to figure that out, but we don't really have the resources here to be, throwing up graphics with comparisons all over the place, but I would love to do that.
No, my best guess would be Notre Dame would be out at 10-2 because they've played. They should be out anyway at 10-2, but ESPN's given them a 68% chance to make the playoffs. By the way, right now, if they finish the season at 10-2, so they're still less than a 2/3 favorite to make the playoffs. So I would assume they're out at 10-2. Vanderbilt's probably out at 10-2.
Wow.
Unfortunately, think about that. An SEC team out at 10-2, Mark, and then USC's probably the third team out at 10-2.
Yeah.
If I had to take a guess. But that's
Michigan gets in over USC despite losing by 18 points head to head.
Probably because of the Ohio State win, and they would have a win over the number 3 team in the country.
Yeah.
I think it's just such an overwhelming result that it's just going to propel them into the college football playoff.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously the committee doesn't care about head to head because Miami and Notre Dame have the same record they played this year. And there's no other indicator that Notre Dame is just significantly better than Miami.
No.
So,
and to separate them by 8 spots is crazy.
No, it's asinine.
Yeah.
It honestly, it ruins the ranking more than just doing the head-to-head thing. Like, I know the head-to-head with Virginia, Louisville, and that whole chain all the way to Michigan looks ugly. And I don't like it either, but it's more valid than having Notre Dame at 10. Sure. So I'm curious what they're going to do tonight with BYU.
Yes.
Because they really boxed themselves in with the Utah thing at 13. Because BYU's got to be 12, right?
Yep. That's where I've got them. And actually, we made, I want to pull this up. I'll find this tonight before we do the rankings. I predicted the rankings last night. And then I went on the Athletic. I went somewhere. Somebody had a playoff predictor. And they had it almost identical to mine, what I came up with. and that was BYU at 12. Yeah, right in front of Utah.
Right. And to me, Utah and Notre Dame I don't know what the committee has seen in Utah to rank them well ahead of these one-loss ACC team and Vanderbilt. Like, the committee is clearly buying Utah as this legitimate team that could, I don't know what he's talking about, but they could make the playoffs at 10-2 and not make the Big 12 title game over some of these fringe teams. Like, we haven't looked into the 9-3 Texas, Oklahoma versus 10-2 Utah, but
apparently their metrics are strong.
Yeah, but I would figure Texas and Oklahoma's got some pretty strong metrics as well. And Vanderbilt as well. Like, Vanderbilt went out, they beat LSU, they went out, beat Missouri. They played somewhat close against Bama on the field for about 3 quarters. So, they didn't get blown out in the stats department. Nope. So I would figure Vanderbilt would have enough comparable metrics to where they would still be near Utah.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating, and I would like to see. Now, we know we're not going to see the ultimate chaotic situation. I do expect Ohio State to finally beat Michigan, so they should be done. But it would not shock me in any way if Michigan's able to pull off that win again. And it's going to be difficult for USC to go up to Oregon and win after having also beaten Iowa, and the UCLA game is also a challenge for USC typically.
Well, let me put it this way. We're at the point in the season where it's almost certain somebody's going to get screwed over.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Like, somebody is going to have and this is why one of the reasons I was mainly against it as well, playoff expansion. Someone is most likely this year going to have a better resume or a better case and be completely left out of the college football. And It's not because of the ACC and G5 getting a spot. It's because the committee just values the productivity of a Notre Dame and their recent game performance over a Texas's resume throughout the course of the season. For example.
Okay. So you're not even talking about a Vandy or somebody of that caliber getting screwed by a lackluster Virginia team that happened to win the ACC.
Right. I'm not even talking about that. That is a tragedy, by the way. But no, one of the big boys is going to get screwed over, Mark. A major brand, I believe, is going to be out of the playoffs over a big brand's resume that has a weaker resume at this point in the season. Like, it wouldn't shock me if the committee, with the way they value Texas Tech, if they lose the second game and still sneak into the field. It honestly wouldn't shock me because they value game dominance, game performance, and all that stuff. The committee can say, well, they lost Arizona State, but they didn't have their starting quarterback, and they only lost to them by 4 points, and Arizona State's going to finish 8-4. It wouldn't shock me if a 2-loss Texas Tech team made the college football playoff over a 3-loss Texas team, or even Notre Dame. Honestly would.
That Texas Tech team would have to be, that second loss would have to be in the championship game.
Correct. It would be in the championship game. But do they have a better resume than a 3-loss Texas team?
No.
Or even the 2-loss Notre Dame team? I don't believe so. But I think there's a pretty good chance that the committee would put Texas Tech in the playoffs. I mean, they ranked them above Oregon with the same record. I mean, that's a pretty strong indication of what the committee is telling us about where they view Texas Tech.
Yeah, we'll see if the Oregon win against Iowa does anything for them, if they just keep everybody in a straight line and just take out BYU. And if they value that Texas Tech win against BYU to the extent that maybe they jump Ole Miss.
Yeah, that would be shocking if they jumped Ole Miss. Like, well, I don't see that happening. I think they're just going to do it all in a straight line all the way until BYU drops to 12. That I don't see them doing that. I mean, I guess the argument would be that Ole Miss beat the Citadel, whereas Texas Tech went out there, and that's such a big win. But
Well, you know what their default argument is always anytime they choose to jump somebody or not to jump somebody is that they can always look back at the previous rankings and say, well, we considered Texas Tech and Ole Miss to basically be the same, and we just had to rank one of them. It was razor close. They can always default to that, even though they didn't tell us that last week. Versus they let us know in other situations, well, 9 was way ahead of 10. They were not close. There was a huge gap there. So they can always massage that narrative.
right, I think that's going to be the case this week with the teams ranking. Like, I'm very curious who's below where Virginia and Louisville's placed. Because to me, there is a clear gap between the teams above them in the rankings and the teams below them. Because I think the committee also has, they're human beings like us, and they'll have the same bias where they really don't believe in those teams as well. So I think there is a massive gap between the teams above Virginia and the teams that will be below Virginia.
Yeah, I get that. From a human perspective, an eyeball perspective. I looked at a writer on The Athletic today, and he showed his rankings, and he had the audacity to make a big deal about honoring the Miami win versus Notre Dame, which is fine. So he placed Miami at 9 and Notre Dame at 10. And then he is not honoring Louisville's win against Miami, and he's got Louisville at 19 with an even better record than Miami, 8-2 to 7-2, plus having won the game on the road at Miami and it having been much more recent. So he was all over the place with his.
Yeah, well, it's hard to be consistent.
It is hard to be consistent.
If I can respond, I was hearing Rob and Dave talk yesterday. I'm not punishing Notre Dame because of the Texas A&M game. I'm punishing Notre Dame because they lost to a Miami team on the road who's turning out to be a middle of the road ACC team. That's why should be punished.
I don't know if they're middle of the road.
Well, they got 2 losses in conference. Yes. And it's to the only 2 decent ACC teams they've played. They've beaten up on all the bad teams in the ACC, and they've lost to every good team in the ACC.
True.
I mean, until Miami goes out on the field and shows me that they can beat one of the top-tier ACC teams, I don't have any evidence to say they're one of the best teams in the ACC or a top-tier ACC team. I know they've got the talent to do it, and they've looked like it throughout large portions of the season, but this is what Miami does. They just find a way to lose football games. And, I mean, I can't rank teams. I think is because if I do that, the field. And this is the shortest season in all of college football. And if we're just going to say, let's invalidate these results, then why are we even playing these games at the first few weeks of the season? Why even have these big-time matchups? Everybody should be doing, I guess, the Penn State-Indiana strategy. If we're not even going to consider these games.
All right, so we're going to wrap things up here. We appreciate you being here to Real.
Yeah, no problem. It's thanks for having me on, Mark. I look forward to the rankings.
Absolutely.
And I look forward to seeing James Madison be represented in that G5 spot.
There we go. All right, just to address Wet Blanket here, if Bama beats Oklahoma, who will Ole Miss have beaten? Well, why does Alabama defeating Oklahoma make Oklahoma any worse or mess with their evaluation? If Alabama is one of the top 4 or 5 teams in the country and they beat Oklahoma by a field goal, why does that invalidate Oklahoma? What's that have to do with an evaluation, a reasonable evaluation on Oklahoma just because they lost a game? So if Oklahoma was playing Stanford this week and they won by a couple touchdowns, that would be a better result than losing to Oklahoma by a field goal to Alabama. So again, we get caught up in this. Well, you're 9-2, and then you lose the last game of the season, but you lose to one of the best teams in the country by a field goal, and suddenly you're 9-3, so you're not as good. Well, actually, if Oklahoma plays well against Alabama and shows themselves to be, a top 10 to 15 team in the country, that actually substantiates their value. It doesn't diminish it. Beating a bunch of bad teams is not confirmation. Like James Madison, this is the stupidest thing in the world. I noticed that James Madison is now ranked in the AP, which I never look at the AP, but it was brought to my attention some fallacies in the AP. So I grabbed the AP and I made an example of what a foolish piece of crap it is concerning some other teams. So James Madison, suddenly they're in the rankings this week. Who did James Madison just beat to validate a ranking? So I'm not going to dig up their schedule. I don't believe I am. Maybe I will. Where is James Madison? Who did they just beat this? Here we go. James Madison this past weekend, they won at Marshall. So that made them a ranked team. All right, sure. That did it. That was, meanwhile, Iowa loses on the last play of the game to Oregon, one of the best teams in the country, and they're not ranked now. That is the stupidity of these morons that vote in the AP. And I hope that's not permeating the college football playoff rankings. So, yes, Oklahoma has beaten Michigan. And that's their best win. They beat Tennessee. They beat Michigan, Tennessee, and they still have these games against Missouri and LSU. So there's a lot. Oklahoma's got their season in front of them. With all the teams that they've already played, and Oklahoma might play the toughest schedule in the country. They still have to play Bama, Missouri, and LSU. So Oklahoma's going to let us know if they're a college football playoff team in the next 3 weeks. If they win 2 of those games and lose to Bama by a field goal on the road, then in a vacuum, I put them in the playoff. Now, I can't say that. All right, folks, appreciate you being here, the Voice for College Football. I got to run. I got a Florida State show. We'll be back here for the college football playoff rankings in just about, an hour or so.